And Ben Maller, the great Ben Maller, the greatest overnight sports talk radio host in the history of sports talk radio. And I say that as somebody who does overnight sports talk radio. He's the GOAT. He was talking about Frank Reich, the head coach of the Indianapolis Colts, quote unquote, sticking his neck out for his guy, his brand new quarterback, Carson Wentz.
He's taking a chance, Frank Reich. They're risking very little, hoping that Carson Wentz will turn out to be something that is of value. He's got no value right now. The only success that Carson Wentz has tasted was under the tutelage of Frank Reich. And Indy has had a revolving door at quarterback. So they're on their fourth quarterback in 4 years. There's no stability. And certainly Carson Wentz does not strike you as someone who is going to lock down, batten down the hatches, the quarterback job. Now, the second thing here, we are big believers on this show that you are what your record says you are. And in Philadelphia, Carson Wentz was not only a quarterback, he was terrible. Right? There's no other way to say it. Carson Wentz is not an upgrade over Philip Rivers. Now, this, based on what we have seen going in to the 2021 season, is a downgrade.
And there he was, Ben Maller, talking about the Frank Reich comments about sticking his neck out for his quarterback, meaning Carson Wentz, now an Indianapolis Colt. Here's the one thing I'll say about this situation. You can look at Carson Wentz one of two ways. You can look at him as the quote-unquote guy who would have won the MVP had he not gotten injured, which is just amazing. That's like me saying, I would have ran for president of the United States if I did. But unfortunately, I went into. It's like, dude, there's a lot of things. There's a lot of what ifs that could happen. I would have married somebody else had I not met my wife. Okay, neat. But the reality is, you married who you married. Or you are who you are. You work in what you work in. And this idea that Carson Wentz would have won the MVP had he not gotten injured, okay, well, that's kind of a big, if. That's kind of a glaring issue that needs to be addressed. This idea that, well, he was the MVP of the league. Yeah, but his knee exploded, so he wasn't. So, I mean, I don't know, why we continue to go back to that. So you can look at Carson Wentz in one of two ways. You can see him as that, or you can see him as the guy who didn't want to compete for his job against a second rounder. I mean, that's what happened. He fell apart. He didn't want to compete with Jalen Hurts. He didn't like the idea of having to compete. I know that for a fact. People in Philadelphia have said it. People that know the situation have said it. Yeah, he didn't like the idea that he had to compete for the job. That's kind of a big issue. In an ultra-competitive environment, you got a guy who didn't like competing. That's a real problem. That's a big issue. And we could say, well, it's with Nick Foles in that situation, and it was tough for him to watch that team win a Super Bowl. All right, that's fine. But the fact of the matter is, Nick Foles got hot because Carson Wentz couldn't finish the season. And then when we got to the postseason, Carson Wentz had a sniff and then went out with an injury again. And we could say, well, yeah, but if he wasn't injured in that playoff game, and if he didn't get injured in 2017, okay, but he did. He did. He did have injury concerns. He did have injury issues. And you got players on the Colts who are saying, man, he just needed a fresh start. He just needed... There's another aspect of this as well, too, that I think is going to be interesting to watch. I'm not saying that he's rooting for this to be the case, but if Carson Wentz fails in Indianapolis, and I agree with Ben, I don't know that he's an upgrade over Philip Rivers. Philip Rivers had a better year last year than Carson Wentz did. Not even close. But if Carson Wentz fails in Indianapolis, who's that make look good? Doug Peterson. Because then Doug Peterson you'll look at and go, oh, he actually did some pretty impressive work there with a guy who has now shown he can't be your quarterback. And if Carson Wentz does work and they make a run to the AFC Championship game, and it's full steam ahead, and Carson Wentz is back in the quote-unquote MVP form that everybody talks about, then Doug Peterson's going to be looked at as a guy who couldn't make it work with that talent of a quarterback, and all along it was really Frank Reich who was the guy pulling the strings and giving them success when they were together in Philadelphia.